the reveal party that we had, when I found out it was a boy. Maybe I've become a little bit of a crybaby nowadays, but we all cried at that moment. The girls were really happy, and during the party, the baby shower, many friends were there, and many presents, and it was all happy memories for us. He was my gaming buddy. I could already see it. You know, I could be playing the Xbox, and he'd be there with me, playing as my partner. He was going to be my superstar. Our daughters were already making plans as before. We had the nursery ready for Logan when he was born. They didn't care about the nursery. They wanted him to sleep with them in their beds. They would say to us, "Mummy, Daddy, you can go out. You can go and have your meals. You know, don't worry about the baby. We'll look after the baby. You know, Logan will sleep with us. He'll be right here." So much so that my oldest loved his nursery and the way it was decorated so much that she wanted to swap. She wanted to sleep there. I said, "Why can't I sleep in his room and he can sleep with our youngest daughter?" But obviously we didn't allow that. They were extremely happy with what was coming. So happy that they didn't care about not having summer holidays, because normally that's important for them, to go away and be on a beach somewhere. But they didn't care. They said, "We'll put it off, it's not a problem." He might not be here physically, but he will always be here in our hearts. And that'll be forever. You know, I know he's here with God right next to me, giving me strength, courage to take this forward. And this is our beautiful sleeping baby.
That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. He was so peaceful, so restful. He looked like he was just sleeping, as babies do. You know, at that moment, we felt like our hearts had broken. And it had. But at least we were able to hold him and to be with him. A sleeping angel, he was. We let him go with the doves so he can fly high and free. A friend once told us that God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. Excuse me. Certainly this has been our hardest battle. We're proud of him, even though he was only with us for 7 months. But he certainly is always going to be a part of our lives. And you never know what you are made of until you're broken. And I can tell you this, my wife, she's made of the hardest material I know. And without her strength and courage, I would not be here. I might be doing the talking, but she's the one that's always rock solid. And we love our son. And always will do.
It's very, very clear from what you've been saying. Thank you for coming and telling us. I think we'll take a few moments, if we may, just to think about what we've heard, and for those who remember Logan, to remember him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very moving, and it must have been very difficult for you. And I'm very grateful that you came to tell us about Logan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just take a moment. Just take a moment or two. Now there's going to be a 5-minute break while we change around, so people may want to stretch their legs if they may, but I'll be rearranging things for the next 5 minutes.
Right.
And then we will hear the commemoration for Dennis Murphy.
Right. Can I rise for 5 minutes? Would that be the most convenient thing?
Please, thank you. you'll see that we've... You can see the screen. And when we play the film... So we're now going to hear a commemoration on behalf of Dennis Murphy from flat 111. And I think the first speaker is going to be Anne-Marie, is that correct? Who's his sister. Good morning. I wonder if we could start, as we did before, with you just introducing who's with us on the stage.
This is my mum, Dennis's mum. This is Dennis's ex-wife, who remained his lifelong friend. This is Peter, Dennis's son, an only child. And this is my brother Tim, Dennis's brother.
You're all very welcome and thank you for coming. I think what you're going to do is read a statement for us, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, again, as I've said before, there is absolutely no rush. Take your time and pause as and when you need to.
Thank you.
All right.
I, Anne-Marie Murphy, speaking on behalf of the Murphy family, will say as follows. Dennis was born on the 10th of October 1960 in Queen Charlotte's Hospital in Hammersmith. Mum says he was born with a twinkle in his eye and a smile on his face, and he kept this trademark throughout his life. Dennis was the proud son of Anne Murphy and was the eldest of 4 children. He has 2 brothers, Mick and Tim, and I'm his sister Anne, and was fondly called by Dennis Little Sis. Dennis spent his early years living in North Kensington until 1968, when he was 8 years old. The family moved to Dorking in Surrey until 1971, when the family moved again to Gravesend, Kent. We attended a Catholic primary and secondary school, and Dennis excelled in the subjects history and maths. He also participated in other activities such as the school choir, being an altar boy, and joining the Sea Cadets. There was one other passion throughout Dennis's young life that was to override everything else, and that was his love of sports, especially football, in which he became a skilled player. Cross-country running and distance running. He ran for the school and district in 1,500-metre races and went on to win many medals and trophies for his sporting achievements. My brother Mick often tells the story of when he lost his bus fare at school, and Dennis put Mick on the bus with his bus fare and then ran home after the bus, which was a distance of 5 miles. At that time, Dennis was only 10 years old. As our father did not feature in our lives from a young age, Dennis took on the responsibility of not only being our big brother, but also carrying out the role of a dad to us. He had a strong set of principles and values which he adhered to and instilled in us, his siblings, to follow also. These included to have manners, to show respect to others, to help and care for others, and to love each other. In fact, he taught us and nurtured us to grow into the adults we are today. When Dennis left school in 1977, the family moved back to West London, and lived just off Portobello Road, where Mum still lives to this day. Dennis went on to take up a trade in painting and decorating and worked hard until he was unable to do so due to health conditions. Dennis continued to play football into his adult life and went for trials for Charlton Athletic and Crystal Palace. He didn't make the grade in professional football, but continued to play football for Sunday League teams until his 30s, when a cartilage injury forced him to give it up. Dennis had such a caring nature, and this was evident in his voluntary work he used to do with adults with learning disabilities, supporting them to access activities in the community, and he got a real sense of achievement from doing this. When Dennis was 22, he met his future wife Tracy, and in 1984 they got a flat together in Grenfell Tower. They went on to have a son Peter together in 1989, who is Dennis's only child. When Peter was 7 months old, they moved to a house in Mitcham, Surrey, and when Peter was 4, they moved to a house in Tooting. Dennis and Tracy eventually divorced, but stayed good friends, and Dennis decided to move back to South Kensington to be near Mum. He then got another flat in Grenfell Tower before 1997, and this was on the 11th floor, which was later to become the 14th floor. Dennis remained living there until his untimely and tragic death. Dennis was a loving son, father, brother, uncle, friend, and our hero. He was the linchpin of our family and touched the lives of so many people. Once you had met Dennis, you would never forget his warmth, wit, cheeky smile, and love of life. Dennis had 3 biggest loves in his life: family, friends, and Chelsea Football Club, and not always in that order. Dennis was at the heart of our family, and his love for all of us was unconditional. This was as far-reaching as his aunts, uncles, and cousins here and in Ireland, and also his nieces, nephews, great-nieces, and great-nephews. Dennis also had many friends he cared deeply for, and if you were lucky enough to have known him, you had a special place in his heart for always. A great source of comfort to us as a family since Dennis's death is hearing the wonderful stories about him from people that we have never met before, telling us stories of how they knew Dennis and the impact he had had on their lives. All of these stories are testament to the qualities he possessed. Some of these were loyalty, caring, selflessness, and his non-judgmental approach to everyone he knew and met. A story we'd like to share with you is a conversation we had with Dennis at a family gathering, where he told us he had become a member of Unite, the bus union. We all laughed and said to him, "You can't be serious. You can't drive a car, let alone a bus." Well, he was serious, as we were to find out after his death, when we received a phone call and an email from the union Unite, sending their condolences and explaining why Dennis had joined the union. The reasons being that he wanted to be a part of the campaign to make his voice and the voice of his community in Grenfell Tower heard, because we truly know that Dennis loved his community. One of the proudest moments in Dennis's adult life was when his son Peter graduated from university. One of his not so proudest moments was the day Peter became a Tottenham supporter, as Dennis was a fanatical Chelsea fan. Him and Peter had lots of light-hearted disagreements about their respective football clubs, and Dennis took great delight whenever Chelsea beat Tottenham. Dennis had been going to Chelsea games since he was a teenager, and even travelled a number of times to Europe to see them play. Although Dennis had health issues in his later years, this didn't hold him back from his thirst for life, and he spent his time helping out at a local boxing club, watching his beloved Chelsea as well as other sports, and visiting Mum on a daily basis. Mum would get great pleasure in these visits, and the daily highlight for her was cooking him his dinner after she had given him a list of errands to do. Aside from visiting and ringing Mum daily, Dennis also had a ritual of ringing his son Peter, his brothers Mick and Tim, and myself on a set day every week. We would have our chats with him, and when the call came to a close, Dennis would always end it with, "Love you, son. Love you, Mum. Love you, bruv. Love you, sis." And we would always say, "Love you" to him too. In the early hours of the 14th of June 2017, at approximately 1:30 a.m, my brother Tim was to receive the last phone call he would have with Dennis, informing him that there was a fire in his block of flats, Grenfell Tower. Tim never imagined that this would be the last time that he would get to speak to Dennis. At 2:32 a.m, Peter and myself spoke to Dennis and reassured him that we were on our way to him, also never imagining that we wouldn't ever get to see or speak to him again. Other people always featured first and foremost in Dennis's life, and sometimes you had to look beyond the strength he showed to understand the worry and vulnerability beneath. When we look back at the life he lived and the challenges he overcame, we really can't think of a better role model to have had. I just have some water.
Take your time. Would you like some water? Got some there?
Ever since Dennis has been gone, there's a gaping hole in our hearts that can never be filled, and it hurts. It really hurts. We can't imagine a day when it won't hurt any less. The pain, loss and sorrow we feel is indescribable and has left us devastated. We as a family feel strongly that there is no reason in the world why anyone should have death forced upon them in such an horrific way. And the day Dennis died, a part of all of us died too. To us, Dennis was an inspiration, and we feel lucky and blessed that he was a part of our family. His warmth and love will stay with us forever, and he has left behind an everlasting legacy. There are three things that nobody can eradicate from our lives. 1, the memories we hold of Dennis so dear, because he does not cease to be, because he has become memories. 2, the only possessions we have left of his now, which are a recovered handful of coins, so poignant to us as he would give you his last pennies if you ever needed them. And 3, that we feel him walk beside us each and every day. To us, his family, he really was our hero. He is our hero, and he will always be our hero. Thank you.
We'll now take a few moments, if we may, just to think about what we've heard and to allow those who knew Dennis to remember him quietly. Thank you very much for that very moving tribute. You can wait for a second and I'll ask the judge if he give us 5 more minutes. There is a very large amount of rescaling to do for the next. So perhaps you first. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Richard.
So we're now moving to the commemoration for Saber Neder. The commemorations are in fact going to be read by Mr. Martin Howe and Mr. David Howe, solicitors for the family. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Perhaps you, before we start, like to introduce who we have in front of us.
We have
Just have a
Saber.
moment, please forgive me. I think there might be a problem. Just checking whether we need microphones, but I think we're okay. If we do, for any reason, I've got one here.
Okay.
Yes, perhaps you'd introduce who we're with.
Okay. So we have Saber's two nephews, Oris and Massey. In the middle, we have Saber's wife, Flora. Beside Flora, we have Saber's son, Farhad. And then at the end, we have Saber's brother, Arif.
Well, you're all very welcome. I think there are 3
Indeed.
commemorations to read, and perhaps you tell us who we're going to hear from each time, and take your time, as well you know.
Thank you. And the reason that the family are sitting in front of here is because Flora has some mobility issues, and the family want to be solidly beside her while these are being read.
You're uncharacteristically quiet, Mr. Howe.
Am I? Okay.
If you'd like to bring that slightly more towards you.
I'm going to read commemoration tribute words on behalf of Saber's brother, Arif. Saber was not only my brother, but my best friend, and the only sibling I had here in the United Kingdom. We did everything together when we were kids, and even till he died, we would always make decisions together. Being so close in age meant that as kids we grew up playing, fighting, and arguing. But more importantly, we grew up loving and favouring each other over our other siblings. The bond we had was unbreakable, a bond like no other. We shared our times of trouble, of sickness and hardship, but most importantly, we shared our happiness. Our kids grew up together, and they are like brother and sister, a relationship that we had, and I still am proud of. Losing Saber was like my world came crashing down. I'd faced many blows in life, losing many family members, but this was the worst. The way in which the fire happened, his death, and the sudden severity of it all left me with so many questions and a big void in my life, to which I have still not come to terms with. We spoke many times a week, but on this particular day, of all days, we didn't speak. Not knowing, we didn't know what was going to happen later that night. It was Ramadan, and we had broke our fast as a family, something that Saber had done that night too. We went to bed not knowing what was about to happen. I was oblivious to everything that was going on that night. I switched my phone to airplane mode on the night so that I don't be disturbed. I did that on the same night. It was roughly at 3:15 in the morning when a call came through from my daughter to her mother, in which she told us what was happening. Farhad had called my daughter, Fatina, and was repeatedly saying, "As our flat is on fire and I can't find my dad." He had told her they were out, but Saber was nowhere to be seen. "I can't find my dad." With Farhad struggling to breathe, and us all being so shocked and confused as to what was happening, my son-in-law brought his car around, and we immediately set off from Leeds towards London to try and find my brother. After a drive that seemed never-ending, we arrived in London and went straight the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, where Farhad had been admitted. Trying to comfort him and looking at him laid there in the condition he was in, I didn't know how to handle my emotions. What was I to do? Do I stay there with him and comfort him, or do I go and look for Saber, who was still missing? Pretty soon, the search began. Within an hour or so, all family members were surrounding us, and everyone we knew was out searching for Saber. Searching hospitals, the fireside, the community centres, churches, mosques, anywhere where we might have found him, where he might have been taken to. All in the hope that we would find him, find my brother. Hours went by, days went by. We never lost hope, always hoping and praying he was unconscious in a hospital or somewhere else, anywhere, as long as he was alive. We never lost hope and tried to reassure Farhad at the time. Flora was in a bad way, unconscious and very ill. We had to be there for Farhad at a time when neither his mum nor his dad could be around to help him. I was always by his side all through his hospital stay. I see my brother in Farhad, and this gave me an immense amount of comfort and calm in what was a horrific situation to be in. It was after Farhad was discharged and days went by that the police asked us for DNA from Farhad. This was when the fear kicked in, the uncertainty and the heartbreak that maybe we were not going to see or hear from Saber again. Maybe we had actually lost him. Pretty soon after, our worst fears were confirmed, and my brother was now a victim of the Grenfell fire. My best friend, my brother, my role model. Taken away from me in such a way that has left a great big hole in my heart, a void that can never be filled. I spent the next few weeks in London, staying with Farhad and making the funeral arrangements with him. Now, we are almost at the year anniversary of the fire, and there are still so many unanswered questions. The only thing I know is that my brother was a hero. He gave up his life for his family and for others. He sacrificed himself in that fire in order to put others first. That is just the brave and selfless person that he was. And that is a memory of him that I will hold in my heart for as long as I live. I will ensure that I am there for Farhad and I am there for Flora, as that is what he would have wanted more than anything else. He would have wanted for them to be happy and safe, even when he can't be there to give them that. I hope we can get more answers from this inquiry, and more importantly, justice for all those innocent people who also lost their lives in this fire, including my brother, Saber.
I think the second commemoration is going to be read by you.
This is a statement on behalf of Farhad Neda, Saber's son. My dad was a unique person. I spent nearly all my life before the fire with my family, living on the top floor of Grenfell Tower at flat 205 on the 23rd floor. We are a very close and happy family. I grew up in a safe home, full of love and full of laughter. My dad loved life and loved meeting people. He would get along with almost everyone, no matter what age, colour, sex, or religion they were. He would treat everyone the way he wanted to be treated himself, with respect. And for this reason, he was loved by so many. He was a man of deep integrity and fairness. Within the community of Grenfell Tower, my dad was well liked by neighbours and friends in the tower. And in the 18 years that we lived in Grenfell, there was never a bad word said about him. My dad came to the UK in 1998 with my mum and me. I was only about 5 years old, but I can remember from the moment that he set foot in the UK that he found himself a job and worked hard until the day he passed away. He was the sort of person who would never complain about work and would never take a day off for being sick. I always remember him saying to me that the day that he stops working will be the day that he truly is sick. For the last 10 to 15 years of his life, my dad worked as a chauffeur. He would always wake up in the morning, put on a smart suit, and go to work. Dad would dress smartly, even on days that he didn't have a client booking. He loved dressing well, which was evident from his wardrobe, which was mainly filled with suits and large collections of ties in all colours and patterns. With his smart dress code and his unique character, my father built a large customer portfolio for his own chauffeur business, which included many VIPs. In the many years that we lived in Grenfell Tower, we got to know almost all our neighbours. From a young age, I remember my dad being friendly with all our neighbours, and he would say hi to all of them whenever they would pass each other. My dad would always encourage me from a young age to always greet our neighbours, as he believed that this was a way of showing respect to them. It was thanks to this lesson from my dad that I became friends with so many people in the tower. As a teenager, I went to Holland Park Secondary School in West London, and my dad took me to school most days in his car. My dad always encouraged me to do well as I could in my studies. He never put any pressure on me, but he always took a kindly interest in all that I was learning. Dad would listen intently when I would explain to him what we were learning in school. He gave me all the support he could to help me make a success of my schooling. He also encouraged me and supported me in interests outside of school. I started to learn the skills of Taekwondo at a young age, and my dad would bring me to my classes and wait for me to finish. He was always watching me as I trained. I became good at the sport, and I started competing in Taekwondo at around the age of 8 at Kensington Leisure Centre. My father encouraged me in the sport and never complained about the long distances he had to drive. He happily took me everywhere as I competed all over Britain. At the age of 15, I made it into the British Taekwondo squad. I was selected to compete in the European Championships in Poland. As always, Dad was by my side. He travelled with me to support me and look after me. We stayed together in the team hotel. Through my father's encouragement, I achieved second dan in Taekwondo, and I have won more than 25 medals in varying colours of bronze, silver, and gold in both national and international competitions. My dad worked hard to support me in this sport to the extent that regardless of working a night shift, he would not hesitate in coming home in the morning after that night shift, picking me up and driving me to competitions dotted all around the country. I know that he was very proud of me and my achievements in Taekwondo. My father and I were a great team together. I felt so close to my dad. He was my best friend and is the man I admire most. On one trip, we went to Sweden, where I was competing in the Viking Cup. And this too is a really treasured moment. Together, we visited many countries for the first time, and I felt completely supported and safe with my dad beside me. Unfortunately, all the medals and all the photographs I had taken alongside Dad at these international competitions were lost in the flames of Grenfell. We also travelled as a family on many occasions to Holland and Germany, where my mother and father have brothers and sisters. I met my fiancée in Holland, and 1 month prior to the fire, my parents and I were in Holland preparing for my wedding. I can still hear my dad's advice to me, telling me that I should concentrate on raising the deposit for a house, and that I was not to worry about the cost of the wedding, as he was happy to pay for it all. As a family, we celebrated my engagement to my fiancée in December 2016, and my dad had told me how proud he was of me and my fiancée. It causes us both deep pain to think that my dad will not be there at our wedding. It hurts so much to think that he will not hold his future grandchildren in his arms as he had held and protected me. I graduated from Kingston University with a BSc in engineering in January 2017, and it was so clear from the smile on my father's face that he was very proud of my achievements. He had always emphasized the need for education, and my graduation with a degree in engineering was the icing on the cake. At the graduation ceremony, Dad proceeded to buy all the official photographers' photographs of me, even though I told him that it was unnecessary. He replied by saying, "Nonsense, son, you only graduate once." My dad made sure the photos took pride of place in our home. They were all destroyed in the fire. I was fortunate enough to work alongside my dad in the business which he had set up for high-end chauffeuring. He gave me the flexibility to be able to study and to earn money to support myself. He was always there to take the pressure off me when it all got too much. He would happily take on work that had been allocated to me in order that I could concentrate on my exams, which were happening at that time. Dad always put me first. He never thought of himself before my mum or me. My dad was the sort of person who would help anyone who needed help. He would always put others before himself, no matter who they were. If a person asked my dad for help of any kind, he would sometimes think for days of a way in which he could help that person. My dad was a calm and very kind man. I think if you ask anyone about my dad, you will find no one who will say a bad word about him. I am sure that they would all mention how he was always smiling and that he was always a pleasure to be around. He has left everyone with very happy memories, and Dad will not only be dearly missed by us, his family, but he will also be missed by many other people because he touched their lives and had a positive impact on them. Since my father's death, I have missed him so very much, every day. When I returned to work after the fire, I felt under a lot of pressure. I felt overwhelmed. I felt that I could not support my mum and that I could not deal with all the consequences of the fire. I could not continue to run his business. I was in a state of deep despair and shock. However, one night I dreamt about my dad, and he came to me in my sleep, and he told me in his calm voice, "Don't worry, son, I'm behind you. Thinking about my dad and trying to do everything I can to be there for my mum and to honour my dad's example has given me the strength to carry on, even though it is so difficult. My dad is dearly loved, and he is sorely missed. My dad will never be forgotten, and I know that he will be looking after us. He will always be behind us.
There's one more statement to be read. Two things. I think we'll just take a second or two to let everybody just gather themselves and just find out whether or not anybody needs some water. Yes? Please, thank you. I think, Martin, the other thing is that this third tribute is going to be followed by a recording which contains Saber's voice. Is that correct?
That is correct. It will be followed by the last phone message that Saber left to his brother-in-law.
Ready?
Yep. I'm reading the statements on behalf of Flora Nedder, Saber's wife, now widow. For almost 20 years, we lived happily together in flat 205 on the 23rd floor, the top floor of Grenfell Tower. We lived there with our son Farhad. We were both born in Afghanistan and grew up there. We met in Kabul in 1989. I had finished my university degree and was teaching in a primary school in Kabul. My school colleague and best friend introduced Saber to me. He was her brother-in-law. I was 26 years of age at the time, and Saber was 28. He had just returned from what was formerly known as Czechoslovakia after 2 years of training in the Afghan army. When he returned to Afghanistan, he was part of the training team for new recruits within the Afghan army. He was a high-ranking army officer. It was love at first sight, which was, at that time, difficult given the traditions of Afghan society. My father did not take to Saber immediately. It took my father 2 years to give his approval to our marriage. And we were married in 1991 in Kabul. We were together as husband and wife for over 27 years. Our one and only child, our son Farhad, was born in Kabul in March 1993. And I remember how happy and how proud Saber was that he was the father of a baby boy. It was forbidden at that time to have men at the birth of their children in Afghanistan. And I remember holding our newborn son, Farhad, up at the hospital window so that Saber could see him from 2 floors below. I could see my husband's beaming smile when he saw us. The nurse at the hospital told me how proud he was of the moment. And Saber, being Saber, he had given all the nurses money to celebrate the birth of my son. They were overjoyed. However, Afghanistan was moving into dark times, and we went from the tyranny of the Mujahideen to the oppression of the Taliban. On account of Saber's position within the Afghan army, we were told that he was being targeted and that our lives as a family were in danger. At the same time, the school where I worked was closed down by the Taliban, and they forbade any women from working. It was such an oppressive time and a dangerous time. We therefore had to take the decision to flee from our country. and we sought refuge here in the United Kingdom, as it is a country known around the world for its respect for human rights and for fairness. We arrived in the UK in 1998, and this country gave us protection. We were recognised as a refugee family, and we were very proud to become British citizens 5 years later. The majority of both Saber's and my family had to flee Afghanistan because of the persecution. Our siblings have settled in the United States, in Holland, and in Germany. Given how close Holland and Germany is to here, we spent many happy holidays, and as a family, visiting our loved ones in both of those countries. Saber comes from a big family. He was one of 10 children, and he was very close to his younger brother, Aref, who lives in Leeds, and who, as we have just heard, has been greatly affected by the loss of his beloved brother. Saber always instilled the importance of education in our son Farhad. As he did in all areas of his life, Saber led by example. He immediately started attending English classes on our arrival in the UK and also enrolled in computer classes. He always tried to better himself. My husband was a very hard-working man, and in the early years of being here, he was more than happy to do any work that he could find in order to support me and Farhad. This work included cleaning, delivering pizzas, and driving. He did some minicab driving for an employer and subsequently set up his own chauffeur business. He was extremely proud of his business, and we were proud of him. Saber ran his own chauffeuring business for the last 10 years of his life and was so pleased when our son, Farhad, joined him in the family business. I was really happy seeing my husband and my son going to work together and working alongside each other. Saber was known to all his customers as being an honest and caring man. It was a reflection of his standing that so many of his customers came to his funeral. Saber's funeral was packed. There was literally no standing room available. My son's cousin in Holland had posted a video on the internet almost immediately after the fire, asking if anyone had seen Saber. It was a very difficult time for the family following the fire. I was in a coma and hospitalized. Farhad was also in a coma and being treated in a different hospital. Our wider family members did not know what had happened to Saber. They did not know if he was dead or alive. The cousin received a call from someone in Holland who felt so moved to call him because he had once been driven by my husband from Heathrow Airport to London. And even though he had only been in Saber's company for a short period of time in the car, he had the very clear impression that he was a good and kindly person and wanted to say that. Saber had that kind of effect on people. He was loved by family, he was loved by his friends, he was loved by his neighbours and customers alike. He was a much loved and very popular man. We were delighted when we were offered a flat at Grenfell Tower back in 1999, and we were both very proud of our home. My husband and I decorated our flat regularly, and we had very many happy times in there together. We were a close community at Grenfell Tower, and our door was always open to our neighbours. Sadly, we have lost many friends and neighbours in the fire, including 2 young girls on our floor who would regularly come into our flat to see us. They always came in to look at a tropical fish tank which we had in our flat. Looking back over the most recent times in Saber's life, I would say that the 2 proudest moments were first being at the engagement party of our son Farhad in December 2016. Saber was looking forward to the marriage of our son to his lovely fiancée Nasrin. And of course, he was looking forward to everything that was to lie ahead for our son, and perhaps a future filled with grandchildren in our lives. Second recent moment that had made my husband so proud was being at our son's university graduation in January 2017. Saber was so filled with pride over what Farhad had achieved in his young life. And it is because of the support, love, and fatherly direction which Saber gave to Farhad that Farhad was able to make and get those achievements. It is just so sad that my beloved husband will not be with us at Farhad's wedding and will not be there to see and hold his grandchildren or share in the joy of becoming a grandparent. Those hopes and our dreams have been shattered. The chance to enjoy such special moments as a close, loving family have been taken away from Saber. And there is a heavy sense of loss within our hearts, which will never, ever go away. Saber had always been there for all of us. He never complained, and he always did everything with a smile. He was my husband. He was my best friend. I miss him so much. He will always be the love of my life. Thank you.
I think we're now going to hear that last recording. So that concludes that particular part of the tribute. So I see that it's 20-1. I wouldn't want the next people to feel in any way rushed.
No,
can I invite you perhaps to break now until 2 o'clock?
Yes. We shall do that then. I'll rise now and we'll break until 2 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed.